In Microsoft Excel, we have the pivot table, and it allows us to summarize and reorganize our data easily than in comparison to, say, using the if function or the VLOOKUP. Now, the first thing we need to do, we need to establish the requirements for the pivot table. So first, you must have a tabular data, meaning you must have columns and rows, and you must have column titles for the different columns, right? So the next requirement for the pivot table is that there are no empty rows or empty columns should exist in the table, right? And also any column that has just a small bit of information, for example, the smallest hotel under the notes column is not suited for the pivot table. Likewise, here we have another example. Here we have the total, and we only have the label total and the actual total in this row, right? And another requirement is if you have cells that are merged, you'd have to unmerge them, right? And what I mean by that, here we have the title here, for example, for the table, hotel guest table. And if you click on it, you can see that it spans from the table, it spans from cells A1 through I1. So this would be a merge and center table title. So what we'll have to do is, for example, is click on it so that it returns to its original position there, right? But what we'd have to do, I'll show you how we're going to clean up the spreadsheet in a little while, right? Now, so I'm going to type another country here or another location. I'm going to put Texas here, and I'm just going to put one bit of information right here, right? So I'll put that there. All right, so what we're saying is we want to eliminate the empty cells that you would have there, right? It's not best suited for the pivot table. So what I would do, if this was the original table, I have to try and get rid of this and get rid of this label, right? So that the pivot table can sort the table accordingly, right? Now, so it must not, the table must not have any um, blank rows or blank columns. So what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of that, right? So I'm going to right click and delete, and there we got rid of that row. All right, we're going to come here now, I'm going to right click and we're going to delete this column here, right? And also remember I told you that we don't want this any small bits of information here. So what we'll have to do is come here, right click, delete to get rid of that. And let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna go up to the to to use a pivot table. How we use it, how we access it. We go up to insert tab on the ribbon, then we click on pivot table, right? Now let me the first thing you need to do is click on a cell in the table that you want to apply the pivot table to, right? To create the pivot table. Or we could click here and select our data range, right? I'm going to close this for the time being, right? I'm going to show you. So what we would do is click here, right? Then we'll go to insert And we can choose a pivot table to make it from scratch, or we can use the recommended pivot tables, right? I'm going to click on it and show you the recommended pivot table. Now, here it is saying that we cannot recommend any pivot tables for the selected data because there are too many blank cells or duplicate values or not enough numerical numerical columns, right? So this is what I was telling you. These small bits of information that is there, we'd have to delete it to use our pivot table, right? So I'm going to come here, right click, delete, and clean up that bit of information. And then when I click on a cell that is in the data range, I can come now and gonna go insert recommended pivot tables. And here now we can see that the software was able to generate some um, pivot table uh, examples, right? But we are going to do our pivot table from scratch. So we're going to come here and click pivot table, right? Now here it has selected our range because we clicked on a cell within our table range. If you wanted to choose the table range, the table or the range, you would click here and then you would select the range of cells like this, right? Then we click here, right? And we want it on a new worksheet. If you want it on the same existing worksheet, you would click here, but we want it on a new worksheet, and then we click OK. All right. So here now, this is our um, this is where we're gonna create our pivot table now, right? We're gonna build a report using different fields from the pivot table field list.